I'm Paula, and I never imagined I'd find myself in a situation like this at the age of 52, living alone in my house by the bayou. Since my husband passed away, I have felt the burden of solitude. But then Charles, my 22-year-old nephew, came to visit for a fishing trip. From the moment he entered my home with his fishing equipment, the atmosphere shifted, charged with an energy I hadn't experienced in years. As we spent the day out on the bayou, the sun warming our skin and the water gently slapping against the sides of our boat, there was laughter, stories, and a connection between us that felt both comforting and perilous. Charles, with his strong arms casting lines into the water, had grown into a man, his physique shaped by years of outdoor labor. I couldn't help but notice how his shirt clung to his frame with every cast. We talked about life, love, and the unexpected paths they take. I shared tales from my youth, the wild nights in New Orleans, and he listened intently, his eyes reflecting not only curiosity, but something deeper, something that quickened my pulse. Paula, you've had such an incredible life, Charles remarked, his voice a blend of admiration and something more, something I was hesitant to identify at first. As the day turned to evening, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink, we sat closer than before, our bodies occasionally brushing. Each touch sent a thrill through me, igniting a desire I thought had long been extinguished. I wondered, was it just the excitement of being near youth, or was there truly an attraction here? Have you ever felt drawn to someone you know you shouldn't? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the humid air, much like the Spanish moss above us. Charles met my gaze, his look intense, searching. I might have, he replied, his words carrying the hint of shared secrets. As we packed up, his hand lingered on mine longer than necessary. That simple touch felt like a prelude to something much more intimate. I found myself anticipating his next move, my body responding to his proximity in ways it hadn't in years. We returned to the house, the silence between us filled with unspoken questions and desires. I caught him looking at me, not as his aunt, but as a woman. His eyes roamed over me, as if seeing me for the first time, or perhaps seeing me in a way he knew he shouldn't. Isn't it strange, I mused aloud, how sometimes the heart desires what it shouldn't? That night, as I lay in bed, the memory of his touch, his gaze, played in my mind. I felt a yearning, a longing for something more than the solitude I had become accustomed to. The question lingered. Should I explore this forbidden attraction? After our day on the bayou, the night felt young, and the air thick with unsaid promises. I decided to embrace some solitude and soak in my private hot tub, letting the warm water calm my stirred emotions. The night was quiet. The only sounds were the distant calls of the swamp and my own heartbeat echoing the day's revelations. As I eased into the warm water, it enveloped me like a lover's embrace. Thoughts of Charles, my nephew, filled my head, his youth and energy stirring something within me that I hadn't felt in years. The night was peaceful, and I was alone, or so I thought. Lost in my thoughts, with the steam rising around me, I allowed my hands to explore, tracing familiar yet thrilling paths, igniting a spark of desire within the privacy of the night. But then, a sudden sensation of being watched stirred my awareness. I turned, startled, and there he was. Charles stood in the doorway, his figure outlined by the moonlight, his eyes locked on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. His gaze wasn't one of shock, but of quiet, burning curiosity, as though he had stumbled upon something he shouldn't have, yet couldn't look away from. He didn't turn away. He couldn't. Our eyes met, and in that moment, the air between us was charged, not just with humidity, but with electricity. There was no shame, only raw, undeniable attraction. I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't just seeing my skin in the water, but imagining something more. I could have called out, told him to leave, but I didn't. I wanted to see where this would go, to feel the thrill of being desired again. Instead of speaking, I kept his gaze, silently inviting him into this moment with me. His look was one of hunger, curiosity, and something that made my heart race. He stepped closer, the light from the house casting shadows around us. I knew he saw more than he should have, but in that moment, I didn't feel the need to cover up. I wasn't just his aunt. I was a woman, alive and wanted. But then, as though realizing the line we were crossing, Charles turned away, his breath heavy, leaving me in the hot tub, my body tingling from both the water and the fire his gaze had ignited inside me. I was flustered, intrigued, wondering what would have happened if I had invited him in, if I had let that moment stretch into something more. Let me ask you, have you ever been caught in a moment like this, where the air is filled with what could be, where desire and duty clash in the most primal of ways? As I lay there, the water cooling around me, I couldn't shake the image of his eyes, the way they roamed over me, not with familial affection, but with a man's desire. It was a look that spoke of nights filled with passion, of secrets whispered in the dark, of a forbidden connection that was so intensely tempting. That night, I found myself lying in bed, my mind replaying that moment over and over. I felt the heat of his gaze even in the darkness, the pull towards something I knew was wrong but felt so right. Could I resist this pull, or had I already gone too far? Was it the thrill of the taboo, or was there something deeper at play? The morning after, when Charles had caught me in the hot tub, the air in my house felt different, thick with tension that was both thrilling and terrifying. I woke up knowing that I couldn't let the events of the night slip away. I carefully chose my outfit, a dress that hugged my curves perfectly, one that whispered of the wild nights of my youth rather than the quiet days of my widowhood. It was provocative, and I knew it. As Charles emerged from his room, his eyes widened, and that same look from the night before returned. It was a look of want, curiosity, and something more primal. "You look stunning, Aunt Paula," he said, his voice carrying a weight that was new between us. I felt a surge of warmth at his words, the exhilaration of being recognized not just as family, but as a woman. We spent the day exchanging flirtations. Every touch was deliberate, every glance charged with significance. I'd graze my hand against his while handing him the coffee, letting my fingers linger just a moment longer than necessary. He'd reciprocate by casually placing his hand on my lower back as he passed, sending shivers through my body. Have you ever experienced that rush, that electrifying spark when someone's touch suggests something more, when every accidental brush feels like a prelude to something forbidden? Charles's compliments weren't merely courteous. They were imbued with admiration that was both novel and intoxicating. "Your laugh. It's like music," he'd say, or "You have this glow about you today." Each word was like a stroke of paint on the canvas of my desire, coloring my cheeks with a blush I hadn't felt in years. I'd catch him watching me, his gaze lingering on my legs, or the way the sunlight caught in my hair. I'd meet his eyes with a playful smile, silently acknowledging that I was savoring the game we were playing. The boundaries of our relationship were blurring, and with each passing hour, the line between what was right and wrong seemed increasingly unclear, less important. As evening fell, the bayou outside seemed to mirror our tension with its own nocturnal symphony. We decided to share a drink, perhaps to soothe our nerves, or perhaps to fan the flames of desire we were both feeling. I poured us each a glass of bourbon, the amber liquid reflecting the sunset outside. We sat close, too close for propriety, our knees almost touching. The alcohol warmed us, loosening tongues and opening hearts. "Paula," Charles began, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "I've never felt this way about anyone my age. There's something about you that's different." His confession hung in the air, suspended in time. "Have you ever heard words that made you question every rule you thought you lived by?" I looked at him, really seeing him, no longer just the boy I remembered, but the man he had become. My heart raced, a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Charles," I said, matching his tone, "I felt it too since you arrived. This pull, this desire. It's not right, but it feels so real." The air between us crackled, our confessions like sparks that could ignite something uncontrollable. I could see the struggle in his eyes, desire pulling him toward crossing the line, but also the awareness of what it might cost. Yet I wanted more. I wanted to feel alive again, to feel desired. We edged closer, the space between us filled with the scent of bourbon and the musk of anticipation. I could feel the heat of his body, the magnetic pull drawing me toward him. Our conversation shifted from words to whispers, from whispers to silence, only broken by the sound of our breathing. His hand found mine, our fingers intertwining, a simple touch that spoke volumes. I leaned in, my lips near his ear. In that moment, I didn't care about what was right or wrong. I just wanted to feel. Then came the moment I knew would change everything. His lips brushed against mine, not in a kiss, but as a promise of one. It was a tease, a taste of forbidden fruit. We pulled away, our eyes locked, breaths heavy, the room thick with the scent of mutual longing. Have you ever been on the brink like this, where every fiber of your being urges you to dive into the unknown, to explore the depths of desire? The night didn't end with that almost kiss. It marked the beginning of something new. We spent hours talking, laughing, and touching in ways that were innocent, yet laden with the knowledge of where we might go. Each touch was a question, each look an answer. As the night deepened, I knew we were both thinking about that inevitable moment. Would we cross that line? Could we? The emotional depth of what was happening was overwhelming, a blend of guilt, excitement, and undeniable connection. I was rediscovering parts of myself I thought I had lost, and Charles was exploring a side of life he had never known. With each passing moment, the tension between us had grown from a flicker to a fire, just waiting for the right breeze to set it ablaze. We stood close, our bodies almost touching, the air thick with anticipation. "Paula," Charles whispered, his voice a caress as he leaned in. We began to kiss, to touch each other. The kiss wasn't gentle, it was the clash of need, years of repressed desires breaking free. His hands were in my hair, pulling me closer. His body pressed against mine, telling the story of longing. I could feel the strength of his youth, the vitality that made me feel alive in ways I hadn't in so long. Have you ever felt that moment when the world stops and all that exists is the sensation of another's lips on yours, the promise of something wild, something forbidden? We moved, still locked in our kiss, towards my bedroom, leaving behind the safety of the living room. Every step was a step further from what was expected, from what was right, into the realm of passion, a realm we both knew we couldn't resist. Once inside, the door closed with a soft click, sealing us in our private world. The room was charged with the scent of the night air and our rising heat. Clothes became barriers we no longer needed. I felt Charles's hands, confident yet trembling with the weight of what we were about to do, slip under the hem of my dress. His touch was electric, sending shivers through me as he explored, as if mapping out the terrain of a new world. I returned the favor, my fingers trailing beneath his shirt, tracing his form. I could sense his yearning pressing against me, the proof of his excitement causing my heart to race. We were two beings in harmony, each caress, each kiss, an unspoken confession of the forbidden attraction we had kept hidden. We tumbled onto the bed, the cool sheets contrasting against our heated skin. The difference in our ages had now become part of our intimate rhythm, my experience guiding him, his youthful energy pushing me to new heights. Our kisses deepened, our tongues exploring as though we could taste each other's very essence. His hands ventured to new territories, my body responding with soft sighs and quiet whispers, encouraging him further. Each touch was like a spark against my skin, igniting a fire deep within. The forbidden nature of our affair only fueled the flames, making each sensation more vivid and intense. As we moved together, our bodies found a rhythm, a language of passion and yearning. I could hear his breath, feel his heartbeat synchronize with mine, our pleasure building with every movement, every shared moment. The scent of the bayou, the damp earth, and the musk of our entwined bodies created an intoxicating atmosphere where time seemed to stand still. I felt truly alive, every nerve awakened by the thrill of the moment, the excitement of crossing a boundary that should have been untouchable. But it wasn't just the physical connection that overwhelmed me. It was the emotional depth of what we shared. Here was someone who looked at me with eyes full of desire, making me feel like a woman again, not just a widow or an aunt. And to Charles, I was an adventure, a forbidden fruit that was all the sweeter for being off limits. As we reached the peak of our passion, the world outside faded away, leaving only us, only this moment where we gave in to everything we shouldn't have. The climax wasn't just of the body, but of the soul, a release of pent-up emotions, desires, and the thrill of the forbidden. We lay there afterward, the cool night air a stark contrast to the heat we had just shared. Our breaths gradually returned to normal, but the silence was not empty. It was filled with the weight of what we'd done, the beauty and the sin of it. Yet in that quiet, there was no regret, only the echo of our heartbeats and the understanding that we had crossed a line together. The morning sun crept through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room, across us. As I woke, I felt Charles's warmth beside me, his arm draped over my waist, as if we were always meant to be here, in this forbidden embrace. The night's escapade had not been a dream. It was very much our reality. There was no hurry to speak, no need for words. Our eyes met, and we shared a quiet smile, a silent recognition of the pleasure we found in breaking the rules. Guilt did not visit us. Instead, there was an unspoken agreement that what we had was ours, beautiful in its defiance. Have you ever woken up to a moment so perfect, so wrong, yet felt it was the most right thing in the world? We didn't rush out of bed in panic. We lingered, our bodies still close, still touching. The morning was ours, and we savored it, basking in the afterglow. Outside, the bayou carried on with its daily rhythm, unaware of the secrets we held inside. Over breakfast, prepared with the intimacy of lovers rather than family, we decided this wasn't the end. Charles's visit was brief, and we would make the most of it. "Why should we stop now?" he asked, his voice still carrying the echoes of our night. I agreed, knowing that this was a chapter of our lives we'd both remember, a secret to carry forever. Our days turned into a dance of desire and discovery. The bayou, once just a backdrop to my solitude, now became our playground for secret rendezvous. What we had started in the privacy of my bedroom continued in the open air, beneath the oak trees and Spanish moss. On fishing trips, we'd cast our lines, but often, we'd reel in each other instead. The thrill of being caught by someone else added spice to our encounters. His touch, once a source of comfort, now ignited fires within me that we quenched in hidden corners of the swamp. Our bodies moved together in harmony with the natural world around us. Have you ever felt the rush of living on the edge, where every stolen moment could be the last? Each encounter was a blend of the physical and the emotional. Charles wasn't just a young man. He was my confidant, my escape from the ordinary into something wild, something alive. I taught him the art of pleasure, and he, in return, showed me the joy of living again, of being wanted, of being desired. The days passed in a blur of laughter, lust, and longing. Every touch was a promise of more, every kiss a testament to our secret bond. The nights were our canvas, where we painted with passion, leaving behind the world that wouldn't understand. There was no talk of redemption, no whispers of guilt. What we had was pure, raw enjoyment, a celebration of life and the forbidden pleasures it could offer. I felt as though I was rediscovering myself through him, finding parts of me that had been lost in the years of my widowhood. We didn't speak of love in traditional terms, but there was affection between us, a deep connection born from our shared secret. It wasn't about love as society knows it. It was about the love of the moment, the love of the thrill. As Charles's departure neared, we made no promises of future meetings, no plans for what might come. We lived in the present, in every touch, every kiss, every moment of ecstasy. The end of his visit wasn't the end of our story. It was simply a pause, a memory that would keep me warm on lonely nights. Listeners, have you ever indulged in a passion so consuming that its end felt like just another beginning? That was what Charles and I shared. No regrets, just the pleasure of the forbidden, the joy of breaking free, free from the chains of convention. So as he packed to leave, we shared one last kiss, one last embrace, the kind that lingers in your bones. I watched him go, knowing that part of him would always remain with me, and part of me would always be with him. As I closed the door, I smiled, not for what had ended, but for what had begun in me, a new chapter of life, love, and lust, unapologetically mine.